This episode of The Energy Show is proudly sponsored by Sunlight and Power, the Bay Area's leading commercial and residential solar contractor. SLP has been designing and installing photovoltaic, battery backup, and solar thermal solutions since 1976. Help fight climate change. Go solar with Sunlight and Power today.
So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off, segment 2 with Enphase and my good friend Raghu Belur. But just kind of backing up a little bit, so many changes with rooftop solar, electronics, and batteries. That simple solar system that Raghu, you and I remember 15 years ago, it's become much more powerful. It's a home energy management system. And, going back with Enphase, you and I started talking in 2008, and I've got a great Enphase system on my house in San Francisco. Probably time for upgrading the panels, but it just works. It makes sense. And I'm just so excited that you're here and we're talking about these things 16 years later. And by the way, my guest is Raghu Belur, who's the co-founder and chief product officer of Enphase. So Raghu, let's kind of pick things up and dive into one of the biggest rooftop solar code changes that I've seen in over a dozen years, called UL 3741. What do you think of that, and what's the implication for safety and consumers?
Yeah, so again, we are very active participants in standards bodies. In fact, we help develop a lot of the standards. If you look at everything from PCS for 3141, if you look at things such as IEEE 1547, I have some amazing code guys in my office, on my team, who are really active participants. Whenever we look at code, we always think about code as the bare minimum that needs to be accomplished. At the end of the day, really what matters in my book is what's the right thing to do for the customer, right? And a lot of times if you look at code, you say, I could do that and could get away with it, right? But really, what is the right thing for the customer? You have to be customer-centric. So when you look at codes like 3741 and other codes changes as well, I mean, today, we really have to be really focused on things like battery safety, right? Because we are deploying so many batteries.
And you guys were the first one with LFP batteries. I remember 6 years ago.
LFP and new standards like 9540, the original 9540, then transforming that to 9540A, and now we are looking at something like 9540B with large-scale fire testing, etc. You always have to think about what's the right thing for the customer. Let me give you another example of this. And I'll come back to 3741. Really, in that sense, 3741 is lowest common denominator for me. You always want to do better than that. At least that's how Enphase thinks about it. I'll give you an example. We do very well in Europe. We have very good, strong business in Europe. Europe has no rapid shutdown requirements. Yet we do very well. Because what our installer partners think about and what the consumer thinks about is, what our installer partners think about, what's the right product for our customers, right? Just because there is no rapid shutdown requirement doesn't mean safety is not important. It is very, very important. So people go back to first principles in their thinking. It's not just about any standard per se. And I really think that's true for 3741. It's true for 9540A. Again, should you do more than 9548? Absolutely. You as a manufacturer, we must do much more than what's bare minimum required by any standard. And that's our mindset, because the guidepost always is what's the right thing for your customer. And you'll always win if you make all your decisions, product decisions, business decisions, customer-centric. We all know that.
Yeah, it's just interesting thinking about the rapid shutdown requirements, UL 3741, and then thinking about 9548. I understand the evolution with the rapid shutdown requirements. Maybe there was problems that were perceived. We didn't really turn out to have any problems. I mean, there were not a lot of cases of firefighters and first responders getting injured by that high voltage. It just kind of didn't happen. So I'm okay with 3741. When I think about 9540, 9540A, large-scale fire testing, we really haven't had that much experience with batteries. And now we're starting to build that experience. And I think that based on safety records with LFP batteries, even in garages, I think over time we're going to come to the conclusion that you don't really need to drive yourself crazy with those requirements. But in the meantime, it adds a lot of cost and a lot of uncertainty for us to put in batteries, because basically if somebody says they want to put it in a garage, the answer is no, unless they have a fire detection system or they have a sprinkler system. And that means, any old house is not going to be able to put the battery in the garage.
Barry, you and I can agree to disagree on this one, right? I mean, for me, I'm very sensitive to high voltage DC and anything and the implications of high voltage DC. Let's not get lucky in terms of safety. Look at what's happened in Australia and lots also in Europe, right? High voltage DC, our partners here are conscientious and they do high quality jobs, right? Mm-hmm. But there can be escapes. And there can be escapes. And we know that there have been rooftop escapes due to high voltage DC. I also worry in the context of batteries, right? In the context of batteries, this is my view. It was bad enough we ran high voltage DC all over the place. Combination of high voltage DC and a high energy chemistry, I think it's really suboptimal. I think there's a better solution. There is a better solution to do it all in AC, and that's our proponency, right? We are proponents of that.
Yeah, we agree. We agree 100%. It's interesting. In 2005 and 2006, I went to Germany to find out why it was so much cheaper to install solar there. They have a completely different culture for safety and installation. They have guilds and people who kind of specialize in things, and they do very high quality work automatically. The U.S. is a little bit more loosey-goosey. We're depending on building inspectors to make sure everything's installed right. Australia has almost no regulations. They do anything they want. So I would say systems installed in Europe are probably very safe because it's done by really trained workers. Systems in the U.S. generally very safe because they're inspected. And I think that, areas where there's really not a lot of code compliance or a lot of training, that's where you may have more problems.
Actually, in fact, in Europe right now, in the EU regulation, at the EU level, there is now a renewed focus on solar and safety. In fact, it's now in the New Energy Act that says you have to go revisit what's happening in terms of solar and safety. And so you're seeing, I think Germany did have some issues. Look, one issue is one thermal event is a thermal event that's too many, right? And so I think, when I think back as an engineer, build systems that are correct by construction, right? And so, yes, I think that I give a lot of credit to our partners, our installers partners. In the US, we are very conscientious about taking care of our customers, about doing quality jobs. But escapes happen, even in here. And so with regards to battery, I think it's okay, I believe. And a lot of the cost is borne by manufacturers, because we are the ones who have to do 9540A, 9540B, large-scale fire testing, etc.
You're burning a dozen batteries for $1 million every new product.
We are every new product, right? So we are doing that, but that's okay. I think it's worth it. It's worth it for our industry to, in fact, be even more safe out of the gate, and then start recognizing, okay, maybe this test is a little too extensive and probably doesn't need to be. But right now, where I sit here, the more we can do, the better it is.
On batteries,
in terms of batteries.
I agree with you on 9540.
Barry, I think I see technology evolving where people are centralizing things again and bringing high voltage DC and batteries together. And I just question, right, is that the right thing to do? Again, right thing to do for the customer, right? And I think when I look at, our battery business is growing very, very, very healthily. I never expected it to grow the way it's growing this fast, at the rate at which it's growing. And always, our partners always think about safety first when it comes to batteries. And then, of course, cost is very, very important. Simplicity of installation is very important. Performance is very important. But they are paying inordinate amount of attention to doing the right thing for the customer, doing it safely, both solar and batteries.
All right, so let's shift the conversation a little bit towards what homeowners are looking for when they get a battery. And in some cases, homeowners are looking for ways to time shift their energy use, reduce their energy consumption, but they pretty much always also want to get backup power. And that brings up the concept of whole home backup. And in order to do whole home backup, you kind of need two things. You need to have the ability to run big appliances, air conditioner, pool pumps, things like that. And you need a lot of energy so you can run those items for a long time. These wants can kind of conflict. It could end up with a really expensive system. So what is Enphase doing to really make it more practical to do whole home backup systems?
That's a great question, right? I think if you look back under NEM 2.0, attach rate of batteries was, you can be, was about 15% on average across California, right? I know there are pockets where there is, it's much more, you were 65%, but on average, we get a view of the entire state of California. It was off the order of 15%. Today, battery attach in California is 100%, right? And people are saying, look, people are picking batteries for arbitrage, and people are picking batteries for both arbitrage and backup, right? And we'll come to the backup question. I do want to again question, any resource that you have can only support one mission critical function.
Optimally.
Optimally, right? So when I think about batteries that you're doing on arbitrage, unless if it's a planned outage, then fine, I can say, hey, I have a weather event happening. Like, for example, we have, if there's a storm coming, our system's automatically going to backup. Or if there's a heat wave, also the system goes into backup, which may not be the right thing to do. It's a National Weather Service mashup, right? But the question is, what if it's unplanned? And here I'm cycling my battery, I'm down to 20% state of charge, and my power goes out. That's not a great customer experience. Having said that, I think by definition, the customer's expectations are, I have a battery, I should be able to do backup as well. And you have to caveat it properly. Now, when it comes to backup, you're absolutely correct. You need to be able to deal with inrush currents around motor loads, right? And so that was the reason when we went from Gen 2 battery to Gen 3 battery, we doubled the power. We went from 3.68 kilowatts for every 10 kilowatt hours to 7.68 kilowatts for every 10 kilowatt hours. So what we have done is with 15 kilowatt hours, you can go ahead and start a 4-ton air conditioner with no problem, which is fantastic. And by the way, pool pump, you should not be running your pool pump when you are in a resiliency situation where your grid is completely out. But if you have 40 kilowatt hours of battery, and now with PCS, you can really tailor the output power of your battery to precisely your need. You can basically decouple power and kilowatt hours. PCS allows you to do that in a very effective manner. What you can do is really, have your cake and eat it too, basically. I can do both arbitrage as well as I can do resiliency. But you need to get to much larger systems, 30, 40 kilowatt hours. I really believe that we are getting there, right? Today, backup system on average is about 20 kilowatt hours for us. And I think you're going to see that number move up to 30 and 40 kilowatt hours.
When I look at it, no matter how big you make that backup system, no matter how many kilowatt hours you have, there's going to be situations where, the power goes out, you're not home, the battery drains, you got the pool pumps running. You got
a hot tub.
And then, your internet's down. Yeah. So that's why I'm a big fan of load shedding. And so Enphase is one of the pioneers. I looked at your little diagrams and building that, and we actually prototyped some of those too, where we're able to do load shedding.
Very effectively.
And building that, and I think now you've got that built into your equipment so that the installer can say, I'm going to land the breaker for the air conditioner here, I'm going to put the EV charger here, and those are going to be controllable loads.
I think it's very interesting. I think the notion around partial home backup is evolving to whole home backup with load shedding. Yes. I think that's an interesting movement. But again, even there, right, again, PCS 3141 is so powerful when you think about what we can do in terms of busbar PCS, right? We can really overlap that PCS to control how much PV you can land on your aggregation device, how much batteries. You can land in your aggregation devices, disassociating kilowatts and kilowatt hours. This is really the age where we can find really amazing hardware software solutions.
So you don't have to spend $40,000 doing an underground upgrade
or any upgrade or everything.
Months.
The days of main panel upgrade, I think, are effectively over. And plus, Barry, I come back to flexible interconnection. PCS has the provision for flexible interconnection where I can transact with my neighbor if regulations someday allow that.
They're not gonna, the only way that's going to happen is that the utilities are going to basically say, hey, there's a lot of grid defect. I'm ready to grid defect. Yeah. As soon as I've got that attachment from my Lightning into my backup system, I'm ready to grid, because that's plenty of batteries. That's all I need. And it's going to be a gradual thing.
I do think that there is benefits to network effect.
Oh, there is.
I really do.
Yes.
And I wish, and I hope, you asked me, hey, before the show, what do you think, what do you hope for, right? We can always hope. I do hope that there is a mechanism where we can work with the utilities, right? We can find a business model that works for them, that works for our industry as well, where common sense prevails and say, hey, listen, nothing can be static. Business models have to evolve over time. And is there a path forward where both our successes can be guaranteed and our business models evolve? I'm always hopeful.
I'll push back on that a little bit because I look at the business model of the utilities and I respect it completely. They get paid based on their net assets, and there's no incentive at all for them other than kind of being nice around the edges to really give us what we want, to give our customers what they want in terms of the benefits of selling power back to them. But we'll see. It's going to change. And I think just like the old POTS telephone system, plain old telephone system with copper wire, that's gone.
1997, the telecom deregulation. I mean, absolutely.
And that might happen with this. But what's interesting, the deregulation didn't happen because of cell phones. The cell phones happened after. But in our industry, what's going to happen is grid defection, I believe, is going to happen sooner to a large degree. And the utilities are going to really have to say, okay, what kind of compromises are we going to have to make with our business model in order to have a business 10 years from now?
I think caveat what I'm about to say, I think NEM 3 was an NBT was the best thing that could have happened to our industry. The way they implemented the transition to NBT was horrible. And I've said this in public forums, that they could have been much more thoughtful about the way that transition occurred. But now we're selling so many batteries into homes. Like I said, California has 100% attach of batteries.
Same as Hawaii.
Across the state. Hawaii is a great example. The homeowner is now in complete control. They have complete control of their energy usage. They produce their own energy, they store their own energy, and they use their own energy intelligently. And that's what our software helps them do, is federate power flow amongst all of these disparate resources. And the home can participate as well in, we call it VPP today, in the broader context of grid management, grid services. I think that was the best thing that could have happened to us. The transition was horribly done.
So I agree with you. There was an interesting study that I bumped into about a month ago. It was done in 2014 by the Rocky Mountain Institute, and it talked about the two paths that incumbent utilities can take to really deal with the technology changes that are happening on the distributed grid. And one path is exactly as you're saying, the path of let's figure out how to work with these resources, let's be fair, let's build this together, and really see how we can come up with the grid of the future collaboratively. The other path is utilities saying, you know what, we're going to put our foot down, we're going to stick firm with our business model, we're going to really keep these annoying distributed energy resources on the fringe, we're going to focus on building transmission, distribution, we're going to focus on building more power plants, and we're going to basically say, hey, we don't believe in that because we want to protect our profits. And what RMI projected was that if we go down that path, the utilities are going to crash at some point. And we are indeed going down that path. Most of them are not being collaborative. The ones that are collaborative are the ones that are not for profit. But the investor-owned utilities are really focusing on, let's just stick with our business model, make the most profits we can for the executives we have, for the boards we have, because that's how they're going to make the most money through their stock options. And that's what's happening. And so it'd be fascinating to see how this is. You and I have been doing this for 20 years or so. But I'm really looking at technology forcing their hand, rather than altruism.
You're absolutely correct. And look, being a technologist my entire career, I believe that technology will find the way, right? Given what's happening, looking at demand on the behind the meter side, as well as all the massive demand that's coming, doubling of demand that's coming in front of the meter side due to hyperscaling of data centers, there is no fear of running out of demand for the utilities. They should be not concerned. They should look to our industry and say, that's the right industry to back, because that's how I will be able to get out of the big, massive demand that's actually happening right now. And it's only going to become even bigger from here. But for Enphase, right, when I think back, bringing it all back together, when I think about Enphase, and we as a energy company, we as a renewable energy company, where we are doing solar and batteries and EV chargers and building this platform, we have to be best in class in all elements of what we are doing, right? Even the microinverter is going through some major transformation, right? We used to be silicon-based, and now we are looking at gallium nitride semiconductors, right? Wide bandgap gallium nitride semiconductors. I've always said this, the beauty of our technology is that there's really no asymptote to cost and performance and reliability, right? And you're starting to see we are heading into this new generation or new era of wide band gap and new technologies that are coming. And IQ9 isn't going to be in next year. IQ10 is already, prototypes are in the lab. And we are doing so much work we have fourth generation of battery that'll show up in the first half of next year. We've got EVs becoming bidirectional. We are doing a lot of work in EV bidirectionality. And I cannot even tell you how much we are doing in terms of software. So I think when I think about what Enphase is doing, and Barry, we also talked about small commercial. We just launched our, in December of last year, we launched our small commercial product. And now our small commercial product is now, we just had the first units come off of the line yesterday at our Arlington facility in Texas. And that all complies with, meets the domestic content requirements, et cetera, and Buy America Act requirements. And so we are very excited about where the market's going and what role Enphase plays in that.
Yeah. Speaking of the market and policies, how is Enphase engaged in the U.S. policy, say at SEIA, and also with the state level policy, say at CalSA?
Yeah, I think we are very active in both of those. We are board members at the national level at SEIA. Active participants. We provide a lot of feedback. We work with them. We do advocacy work. We do all of our advocacy work through our partners, through our associations. Mm-hmm. By the way, we do that worldwide. So we are members of both federal at SEIA as well as CalSA and a number of other state associations. And we like to support it through them rather than go at it ourselves. It makes less sense. Yeah. It's better to do it by supporting our association. For example, I really think that in addition to the policy work, a lot of work that CalSA is doing in terms of code is very good work. And so we actually support that specifically because we are very interested in how codes and standards evolve, right? In Europe, we work through the Solar Energy Association for Europe, right? We have in
Europe,
the Netherlands, work through local associations as well. So that's how kind of we do it. We take it very seriously. It's something that our industry doesn't do that well.
Some people do, right? Some don't. But the companies that are in it for a long time, they're not freeloaders, and it's so important for us to get the policy right. Because if we don't have the right policies, or if we let bad policies get implemented because we're asleep at the switch, our businesses suffer, and the transition to this renewable industry is going to be much more slow.
I was somebody invited me to speak at an event recently, and I said, we cannot just be recipients of policies and then complain about it.
Yeah,
we need to be active participants.
Yep.
And by and large, I'm the eternal optimist. By and large, I believe that if you're there participating, you will be heard. You may not always like the result.
May not get your way. Yep.
But you will be heard. It's very easy to not participate. And then you have no right to complain that, hey, things didn't go the way you wanted it to go. We do our best to participate. We're not perfect, but both at the state level as well as at the federal level.
We're almost at the end. What other things do you want to talk about regarding Enphase or the industry in general?
I think the best of days are yet to come for Enphase as well as for our industry. I really believe so. And I think my optimism is rooted in reality. I really believe when I look at what's going to happen over the next few years, particularly with demand that's coming, we really are, for the distribution infrastructure support, we really are the perfect solution, the perfect solution. And again, if you look at it from a consumer point of view, a homeowner point of view, we really are the best solution for them. And that's the mindset that Enphase approaches everything with. I think about both first principles and I think about what's good for industry. I think about what's good for Enphase. And I think the best of the days are ahead of us.
Spoken like a true optimist. Yeah, you and I have been in this business a long time. All right. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Raghu, for joining me on the second Enphase segment of the Energy Show. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you missed any of today's show, you can always go to the Energy Show website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.
This episode of The Energy Show was proudly sponsored by Sunlight and Power, the Bay Area's leading commercial and residential solar contractor. SLP has been designing and installing photovoltaic, battery backup, and solar thermal solutions since 1976. Help fight climate change. Go solar with sunlight and power today.